Matt Brown was discussing Francis's legacy, and Matt contended that Francis has already damaged his legacy so much. And that is an extremely interesting case. Like, I'm going to fast forward you through Matt Brown's statements, but just to give you a real brief synopsis, it was basically, should have he left the UFC? Had Francis not left the UFC, would his legacy be different? And Matt said what I think everybody was thinking, which is that fight with Tyson Fury that so many of us thought he won elevated Francis to such a high level. It was getting greedy, going back, going to the Joshua fight, not understanding you're not actually a boxer, and this was a rare performance. And then the MMA is essentially non-existent. So now you're a boxer that got knocked down 4 times in 3 minutes, and ultimately is 0-2. You never won. And then your MMA career goes up in smoke. But I don't know that if you ask Francis that he would disagree with you much. I mean, right? Like, a guy can be real objective and go, yeah, it'd be better if this had happened, or it'd be better. Everybody can do that. You can do that with what you've done already today, right? Hindsight. It's a question, though, or an issue of I'm not fully secure that Francis doesn't understand that from an MMA perspective, his career is all but wrapped. There is nothing on the books for him, and has been nothing on the books for him for a meaningful period of time. And it's hard to imagine that changes. It's kind of hard to imagine that Francis is going to get booked again in MMA. And the time frame, and it's kind of tough. So from that perspective, is he done? Is Francis done and he just doesn't know it? That is very possible. Yeah, that's very possible. My final answer, if I really had to give it to you, would be no. That there will be some kind of a competition, and if he can change his recipe, if he can find a way to make sure that competition is a commercial and a marketing piece for his next one, sure, any fighter anywhere, if they can just understand that marketing piece, can turn it into a domino effect and turn 1 into 3, sure. But you're making a massive guess that Francis is even studying that side of it. So it is not without question that Francis never fights again. Whereas, I think this was a point of Matt's. If he was still with the UFC, he not only would be fighting again, he'd have something lined up. He'd have had, already a few in the rear view. He'd have something coming up, which was gonna lead into something else. I do think that that's accurate. I just don't know that Francis would do that, right? I mean, the only thing that's true when this whole thing is done is the money and the miles. You are not going to get that time back. That time that you spent on airplanes and hotels and making towns and having dinner by yourself up in the room. Like, you're not going to get that time back. And did you make and did you hold on to enough money to justify that time that you're not going to get back? And Francis made a whole jackpot full of money. And so when I talk about Francis might never fight again, I can also tell you something very unique about Francis, is that he doesn't have to fight again. That's very unique. There's 5 guys I could tell you that for. And if I pushed, I might be able to get up to 10 people that came through this sport, and when their time was done in this sport, whether it was by choice or not, had succeeded so well that they didn't have to do it again. I might be able to get to 10. And so good for Francis, but how is he remembered? That's an interesting question, man. It's a very interesting question, because amongst the boys, very well, the fellow fighters see Francis, I was with Rampage. I'm sitting with Rampage, who is a type A alpha male to the highest degree. And Francis is a number of seats down. He's like 10 seats down from us. And Rampage is, man, I gotta get over to Francis. I gotta get a picture. I remember thinking, man, you're Rampage Jackson. You play B.A. Baracus. You don't need a picture with. You want a picture with Francis? And then he told me, he said, man, I got one, but it was years ago. I gotta get a newer one. I gotta freshen up my picture. And Rampage was excited about seeing Fran. And I just remember being surprised. Rampage was a much bigger star. But with the fighters see him in a certain way, Kamaru Usman just wanted Francis's presence. He just wanted him there at his fight. He got a strength just from Francis being there. So the fighters do hold Francis in a very, very special regard. Is that enough? Because the public does not. The public just didn't see enough of him. He just didn't get enough camera time in the public. He would have needed more matches, or he needs more matches. Interesting one. It's a very interesting spot. What would Francis be doing? What would be different? Who would have he beaten? What does the heavyweight look like? Heavyweight division look like right now with Francis? What have we already had? Because what have we had? 3 years? What have we already had? Aspinall, Francis, Jones, Francis? What have we? Some massive fights. Would they still be working on it? Would that round robin still be going? Could one guy beat everybody? Did they trade it? I beat him, he loses to him. I beat that guy. Like it's a very fascinating spot. I appreciated the conversation from Matt Brown bringing this up, but now I want to use it on my channel. I want to steal Matt's idea and I want to use it over here. I just want you to leave comments. What is Francis' legacy like had he never left the UFC in comparison to what is his legacy like now? And of course, right, if a guy does some more things, he can erase real fast. I just don't know that it's likely that Francis is going to do any more things. I think that Francis might be retired. Might. Only time will tell. But I do know it's a very short list if he's not. So we're going to have this conversation at some point. Let's have it now.